The Komodos, a family of simple charcoal burners who live on Mount Kumotori. A happy little family composed of a father, a mother, 4 sons, and 2 daughters. We all know how the story plays out, but what if we add another brother to the so-called little family? An older sibling for Tanjiro to look up to, and what if that sibling just so happens to be the one and only person who spared Nezuko's life? That's right, Giyu Tomioka, or how we should say, Giyu Kamado. What would our story look like if this exceptional person was Tanjiro's older brother? Let's find out, shall we? But before that, my name's the Dragon Lord. If you're new around here, do please like and subscribe. It helps me out, and it shows me that you like these kind of videos. Well, join the Discord maybe too. That would be nice. Anyway, let's get into it.
I'm up now, 20,000 on a bus down, I'm on my way up, going up now, and I ain't never gonna touchdown.
Tanjiro and Kie had married each other earlier than they thought. The couple was just that much in love. They'd decide on having children pretty early on, and so it was. Giyu Kamado was born. The boy was born 2 years before Tanjiro, and was quite calm and cheerful even as a baby. Kie adored Giyu, giving him a lot of attention. Of course, after Tanjiro and Nezuko were born, she'd split her love amongst them equally, caring for all the children. Tanjiro, however, cared a bit more about Tanjiro than the others. Still caring for the others, but putting most of his energy in teaching Tanjiro. When Tanjiro was about 4 and Giyu was about 6, their father would teach them the Hinokami Kagura dance, and the breathing technique for it as well. Giyu, being quite observant, would try to start using this breathing technique, although it hurt him a lot. Tanjiro, mimicking his brother, would do the same, although he wasn't as hurt as Giyu was. Their father would explain how Giyu wasn't really suited for the Hinokami Kagura, as he pointed out his dark blue hair and blue eyes. Much to the father's dismay, he still tried using it. This inspired Tanjiro to do the same. Giyu would never really let this breathing technique go, and Tanjiro, who looked up to his big brother and father, decided to do the same, although he wasn't as disciplined as Giyu was. Over the years, their father had gotten a bit weak, but that was no problem. Giyu and Tanjiro, being the good sons they were, would help out and do a lot of the physical work, even against their mother's wishes. They'd grow up to be a happy family where they'd laugh all day and play with each other. One day, Takeo had accidentally fallen over a boiling pot of water, though. Tanjiro had quickly intervened. Without realizing it, Giyu had done the same, as they both got burned trying to protect the younger sibling. Tanjiro had a bigger burn than Giyu, as his forehead had been burned, although Giyu still had a small scar on his face, specifically on his left cheek. This wasn't anything that they cared about, as they were able to protect Takeo, who admired both brothers. Time moved forward again with nothing big happening, although when Tanjiro had become 8 and Giyu had become 10, the latter started piquing interest in swordsmanship, and because of this their father had allowed both of them to pick up a bit of swordsmanship from the mercenaries that passed in the nearby village. Only when they were there to sell charcoal, though. Both of the boys' eyes lit up, and they got to it. 2 more years passed in a breeze, and disaster had struck in the Kamado family. Tanjiro Kamado, Tanjiro's father, had passed away. All the Kamados were struck, but Tanjiro and Giyu, being quite close, had each other to bounce back up. They resolved themselves as they got up to take care of their family. And so they did. They'd work together on most physical labors. They'd even go hunting to save money on food, as they learned quite a lot of things from the mercenaries and villagers. Just like that, 3 years had passed. Morning had struck, and Nezuko looked around the house as she searched for her two older brothers, although they weren't there. As she went outside, she would see both brothers at the charcoal burning furnace. They were laughing whilst they chatted. "How come you two are up so early?" she'd say with a frown on her face. "We're preparing to go down the mountain to sell lots today," Tanjiro would say, pointing at the two baskets. "You know, both of you don't have to do so much work," Nezuko would say as she sighed. "Well, we got another basket and an extra axe with the excess money, and we were able to get Mom that new dress which she loved. If we keep at it, we'll be able to live comfortably for the rest of winter," Gyu would say as he came out holding some more wood that they would burn. He had gotten taller, only a bit taller than Tanjiro, but it was still noticeable. The two of them had been planning on getting everyone gifts for winter, as they kept working together to sell lots of charcoal. "Well, don't overdo it today. Remember, you're gonna perform the Hinokami Kagura tonight for Rokuta and Mom." Nezuko would remind the two of their promise. They had been performing the dance in their father's stead for the last 4 years. Although they couldn't perform it all night like their father did, at first they couldn't, but slowly and surely they had been getting there. "Ha, this year I'll be able to dance longer than you," Gyu would say with a grin. The previous year had him having to stop after a few hours of dancing, as his body still hadn't been used to the breathing technique. However, Tanjiro had gotten used to the fever feeling. It actually made him more productive, and he was able to do the dance for the entire night. However, he passed out right after. Gyu had stirred up some kind of rivalry between the two, and they'd use the dance and breathing technique anywhere they could. "I'd like to see you try," Tanjiro had said jokingly. Shortly after, their mother came outside, as they all talked for about an hour. Around that time, they had to set out down the mountain, giving their goodbyes to everyone inside and outside. They'd set out, but whilst walking down the mountain, Gyu had slipped as he fell. Luckily, the snow had softened his fall, however, his leg was a bit hurt. He couldn't run on it, but it was fine and he could still walk. Tanjiro had pleaded with him to go back home and rest, however, Gyu reaffirmed that he'd help out Tanjiro. The two would start selling charcoal to the villagers, with Tanjiro using his sense of smell to help out the villagers. And Gyu would talk to the mercenaries about techniques and other things like he always did. He learned a lot through this and always taught Tanjiro how to do these things as well. The two of them had a good grasp on basic swordsmanship, although buying a katana was out of their price range, and they had to make do with the axes they had. They'd sell everything as the sun was setting, and after a bit more walking around, they'd get to the foot of the mountain. They'd get stopped by a village elder who'd invite them inside. Gyu at first declined as he wanted to get home, but Tanjiro, seeing his injured leg, decided to force them to stay. The old man would give them some food and he'd take care of Gyu's leg. The next morning they'd set out together to reach their home. The wind would breeze as the two of them were chatting. "I'm so happy we were able to make a good amount of money. Now we'll be able to get Nezuko that new dress," Gyu would say while smiling. "I know what you mean. I was so worried." Tanjiro would stop dead in his tracks. "What's wrong? Why'd you stop?" Gyu would ask curiously. Tanjiro's head was down, but when he looked up, Gyu knew. "I smell Nezuko's blood," he'd say right before he started running. Gyu would try to follow him, but fall behind. Tanjiro laughed at a horrible sight. His family was slaughtered. Gyu arrived a bit later, however, he was too shocked to say anything. Nezuko's still breathing," Tanjiro would say as he picked her up. Gyu didn't have time to despair, although the feeling he was currently experiencing was like someone had punched him in the gut. "We have to get her to a doctor," he'd say as he said that. Tanjiro started running, although faster than normal. He was using their father's breathing technique to speed up. Gyu took one more look behind him as he started running after Tanjiro, with a tear falling down his face. He'd catch up as he was running full speed. His leg was hurt, but at the moment that wasn't their biggest concern. Getting Nezuko to a doctor would take priority right now. Gyu noticed where they were headed and wanted to warn Tanjiro. However, Nezuko started to move on his back, which made the two fall down the side of the cliff. Worried for his brother, he'd yell out, although Tanjiro just yelled back that everything was fine. Gyu couldn't land that fall, so he wanted to go around. However, he'd hear a noise. The noise of metal colliding with metal. He'd look back down to see a pinkish-haired man with 2 scars on his face standing before Tanjiro. "Are you aware that you are protecting a demon?" the man would say, which Giyu didn't hear but Tanjiro did. The boy was still a bit shaken from the entire experience. "I'm not protecting a demon, I'm protecting my sister," Tanjiro would say with a firm look as he gripped his axe. Nezuko, who was there, was bewildered by the situation and just stood there. The man introduced himself. "My name is Sabito, and I will have to slay your sister. I'm sorry," he'd say as he rushed at Tanjiro and Nezuko. Tanjiro pulled out his axe and the two proceeded to clash. He had learned how to block from mercenaries and he had a good grasp on the basics. He was nowhere near an actual samurai's level, but he could at least hold his own. Sabito had realized that what had happened earlier was not by coincidence. For the split second that he tried to hit Nezuko, Tanjiro had pulled out his axe and blocked the attack, bringing them to the small bit of conversation they had prior. However, he just reaffirmed himself, and very quickly Sabito started overpowering Tanjiro, although he stood impressed at the boy's strength. Nezuko had sort of woken up and started helping Tanjiro out. This amazed Sabito, who thought to himself that she must be starving, but yet she is resisting her hunger. "Get away from my family!" Giyu would say, catching Sabito off guard. Giyu took a breath, which Sabito saw and realized he knew of breathing, as Giyu proceeded to swing down his axe. "Hinokami Kagura, fire wheel," Giyu would say instinctively as he swung his axe down. However, Sabito had already picked himself back up as he deflected the attack and knocked out Giyu. "That was quite marvelous. You both hold great potential for becoming demon slayers. That technique was perfect, but he lacks proper training. I'll let your sister live, on the condition that you both become demon slayers. So listen to me. Head to Mount Sagiri and find an old man named Sakonji Urokodaki. Learn from him and become demon slayers. Maybe that way you can find a cure for your sister. Also, keep her out of the sun," the man would say as he disappeared. Nezuko proceeded to pass out again, leaving Tanjiro there alone to think about everything that just happened. He picked up his 2 siblings and headed back up the mountain. And that is where today's part ends. I hope you guys enjoyed this new What If. It took a while to make, but hey, more uploads coming, right? And I'll see you lovely cubs in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and join the Discord if you haven't already. My name is Dragonlord, and I'm signing out.
Tell me a story.
There was once a pale man with dark hair who was very lonely.
Why was it lonely?
All things must meet this man, so they shunned him.
Did he chase them all?
He took an axe and split himself in 2, right down the middle.
So he would always have a friend.
So he would always have